Do you have a gardening problem? We can help you with that. A program dedicated to help you grow a better garden, maintain your landscape, grow healthier trees, make that grass look a little bit greener, as well as preserving what you grow. We're here to help you with your gardening problem. You're tuned in to Garden Talk Radio.
You are listening to the most informational-packed hour of garden-focused radio in the country and on the internet with your host, husband and wife team Joey and Holly Baird. This is the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show.
Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us on the program to talk gardening for the next hour. Whether you're listening through your radio on one of the 16 stations we are broadcasting on throughout North America here in 2020, or via the Simple Radio app, the TuneIn app, or through the website, our website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, underneath the Radio Season 4 tab at the top of the page, podcast replay or in-studio video replay. Thank you for taking time to join us on the program. I am your host, Joey Baird. Beside me is my wife, co-host, best friend, and gardening partner,
Holly Baird.
This program is about you, for you, to help your garden grow better, to have healthier trees, to maintain your landscape, to make your yard look a little bit greener, as well as indoor and outdoor, and preserving what you grow. There's several ways in which you can get a hold of us during the program, after the program, and anytime you've got a garden question. You can submit that question via email at gardentalkradio@gmail.com, gardentalkradio@gmail.com. If you got Twitter, you can send us a tweet at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG, and we will tweet you back. You can also jam your fingers in the phone anytime and give us a call 24/7. 1-800-927-SHOW. That's 1-800-927-SHOW. And if we can't get you on the program right now, we will give you a call back and get your question answered. We've got a big show lined up for you, as we do every program. In the first segment, we're going to talk about to till or not to till the garden. Which is the right answer? Is there a right answer? As well as in segment 2, we're going to go over 4 landscaping trees and 4 fruit trees you should or consider to have on your property, as well as author Kim Eierman will be with us and will answer your garden questions. So let's get in the program and let's go over the first, get started on to till or not to till your garden.
Sure. So we're going to go ahead and talk about, in the ground garden. And possibly even raised beds.
Yeah, some people will till the raised beds.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought you just kind of turn it over. Okay. So you make this decision for your garden. This is your decision, but we have obviously come up with some information for you. So the first questions that you need to ask is, why do people till the garden?
Oh, there's a couple of reasons why people till the garden. One is for convenience. And they think it's an easier way to loosen the soil up, to get the soil prepped for the growing season.
Right. So it's going to loosen the soil. It's also going to mix organic matter in the soil. So some people who till their garden will take some sort of nutrients, whether that be their own compost or bulk compost, whatever, to mix that organic material in. They'll also add like coffee grounds, whatever, to get that all mixed in. So that is one reason to mix the organic matter in. But tilling can cause damage.
Yeah, people are not familiar with it. They just think, okay, I'm going to till each year. I do it every year, twice a year. Sometimes, whenever it's weeding time, I'll run the tiller through. And they want to go down very deep because they think the more depth in which we till, the better the soil quality is, and we get that all mixed together, and the roots will be loose, and everything will be great. But that's not necessarily the case. So you want to
do more of a surface till?
If you're going to till, yeah, because you do not. The more tilling one chooses to do, in some instances, it can be more damaging to the soil on a number of different levels.
Right. So that's something that you want to think about because, for one, there is a natural ecosystem going on in your soil. So it's found this balance, and it's things like the decomposers, like the worms, the other decomposers, like the different fungus, smaller decomposers, like the good nematodes. How many times can I say decomposers?
Right.
But decomposers like that. So when you till, you do kind of shake it up a little bit for them.
Yeah, you mess up the balance in which they have already in the garden. Now, also the other thing is whether you till, if you've got a large garden, many people will go in with a rototiller and till the soil up. But what that can do is, one, that can that can cause more weeds, because one, you're allowing the seeds to surface and be undormant. Some seeds can lay in the ground for up to 80 years. And then once you till, you've brought those that are 8 or 9 or 10 inches down back to the surface or into loose soil. They get warmth, they get sunlight, they get water, and they begin to grow. And it can be very overwhelming. And then if you do have a lot of weeds in your garden and you choose to till, what you are doing is you are actually planting more weeds, because the tiller tines cut up the roots, and many of these crops propagate by root divisions. So now instead of having 80 weeds in a path, you've chopped them up, and now you realistically and literally have 800, 1,000 weeds, because all of these foot-long chunks are now chopped up into dozens of segments, which are now going to regrow and repopulate that area in which you were trying to get rid of the roots to begin with.
Right. So that is definitely something you want to consider, is how you're going to till, mess up the ecosystem, and then create more weeds.
And whether you till or not, there's a certain time in which you should be in the garden, and other times where you should leave that soil alone.
Right.
If it's too
damp,
or wet,
that's going to be a problem, and that's because you're going to basically just be tilling chunks of wet mud.
Yeah, and it will actually damage the soil structure to the point where it's not going to be very absorbent with that moisture throughout the growing season. The way you know if it is okay to till or spade or work in the garden is if you take a clump of soil and wad it up in your hand to make a ball. Take the other hand and poke it with your finger. If it gently breaks apart, yeah, good time to either till or work the soil. If it doesn't, and it just is a mud ball, that's not the time that you get away, because don't even walk in the garden, because the compression is greater in that instance than it would be if the soil was bone dry.
Right. So that is something that you want to keep in mind. Let's talk about worms.
Okay.
So worms are very important to your soil. They bring nutrients from down to 8 feet deep. They circulate all that nutrients. They break up the organic matter. They feed your soil. They aerate your soil. They do a lot of good things for your soil. So when you till, you take a chance of chopping those poor little worms up.
And they may be the most important portion or important thing of your whole garden. Without worms, you don't have a very good soil structure, because the worms aerate the soil and allow oxygen. Plants need oxygen, the roots do, as well as it allows water to percolate through the soil much more easily than if it was just a block of soil with no worms in it at all.
Right. So you want to keep that in mind, that these worms are living in your soil. So one thing you can do if you're like, I'm just going to till, this is what I do, this is what I've done.
And we're not telling you
telling you can't do that, but we're just trying to tell you how to do it. Be more conscious and smarter about it. So what you can do is you can take your tiller, and turn it on and set it next to wherever you're going to till for, like a couple minutes. And worms sense vibration, and when they see that vibration or feel that vibration, they typically will go deeper in the soil. They, that way they stay safe. That's what they do when it rains. They also feel the vibration from the rain, and then they go deeper into the soil. So when you turn your tiller next to where you're going to till, the worms will sense that. They're going to go deeper into the soil. I mean, the smart ones will.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then that way you can till without having to worry about cutting up too many of your your worm friends.
So that is like that. Those are some of the things you need to be aware of if you're going to go to the expense of tilling the soil. Maybe you don't even have a tiller and you're thinking maybe I should till. It's a decision that each gardener needs to make. However, there is an expense up front for the tiller, and then if it's a gas tiller, you got maintenance and oil and gas. If it's an electric tiller, you've got to figure out the maintenance or the life expectancy of that particular piece of equipment. And where you see our garden on the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and our YouTube channel, the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener, for many years, we've got up to this year 1,800 square feet in the backyard of Holly's mom's backyard. And we don't own a tiller. That was all done and has continued to be utilized and soil loosened by a garden fork and a shovel. However, we're transitioning to raised beds to get away from the weed issue that we've developed and cannot get away from, and we do not want to use harmful chemicals. So that's the tilling portion. Now the question we all should ask is, should we till? And we want to think about this. We want to think, how does nature naturally get things to grow? They don't have tillers or gnomes going in the forest loosening soil up.
Right. So you want to keep that in mind, is how does nature do it? And the trees or the leaves fall from the trees and or the plants or whatever, and the plants typically at some point will fall over as well when those plants are become perished. So nature builds kind of its own soil structure, and we've mimicked that with adding leaves from the trees around us in the fall and covering the garden with those leaves to build essentially what would be a till-less garden.
Yeah, and whenever we're talking about soil, even whether you till or you don't till, you always want to cover that soil. You want to mimic nature, because without the covering of the soil, and we've all seen this, the water, rain, snow, all that creates valleys and starts pulling the soil off of the surface. As well as if you leave soil bare over the summer and even the winter, it gets weathered, and you see the depletion of the nutrients in the soil. Just visually, it becomes a different color. So we want to cover that soil, whether it's chemical-free, seed-free grass clippings, you said leaves, or straw, or anything like that, throughout the growing season as mulch, and or during the off season, during winter, or without if it's just a fallow bed. So we want to cover those things up and keep that in mind. So with a raised bed, there's not nearly the amount or for some people, the necessary requirements to till as potentially a ground garden would be. With the raised bed, whenever the soil gets depleted and you've gone down 2 or 3 inches, you can just top that soil on top of the bed. And even with raised beds, or even with a traditional ground garden, some people do not till. They simply bring in compost and layer 1 or 2 inches of soil on top of the grow beds, naturally let the worms, the microbes, the bugs pull that soil down, as well as the water.
That is a really good method.
Percolate down.
Yeah, and that's how you can help build your soil, build your beds, especially if you live in an area maybe you don't have access to a lot of leaves.
And it's easy because you don't have to till. You just layer it. There's some expense, but with anything in life, any kind of activity, there's expense. So, it's something you can think about and look at when it comes to the methods of tilling or not tilling.
Well, thank you for taking your time out of your day to listen to our show. This is our 4th show of 2020. Did you miss last week's show or the week before? We talked about fertilizers last week and when to use them, 20 deer-resistant plants for your landscape and garden. And our guest was Katie Elzer-Peters. You can listen to that show by going to your favorite podcast platform and searching the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener podcast. Or we can make it even easier for you to find us. You can send us an email to gardentalkradio@gmail.com and put in the subject line Show 3, and we will send you the link. We will be right back. Do not go anywhere. We'll be talking about fruit trees and non-fruit trees for your property. You are listening to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, a program to help you grow a better garden, maintain your landscape, help your trees grow better, make that grass look greener, and preserving what you grow for indoor and out.
You can bet the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardeners phone lines are always jammed during the show. So Joey and Holly keep their phone lines open 24/7 to help you. Call anytime 24/7. Just dial 1-800-927-7469. Or just remember 1-800-927-SHOW. SHOW. Leave a message and they will call you back.
We here at the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardens understand that healthy soil is always the key to a successful garden. We know that chemical fertilizer burns carbon out of the soil and kills the microlife needed for a healthy soil ecosystem. No worries. Chicken Soup for the Soil by Dr. Jim's will stimulate life in the soil and supply all the nutrients most fertilizers neglect. Rather than force-feeding water-soluble chemical fertilizer, we suggest feeding the microbes a smorgasbord of 100% bioavailable nutrients that your plants can consume when they need them. Chicken Soup for the Soil is an amazing fertilizer that will increase the quality of all the fruits and vegetables you grow. Perfect for gardeners, growers, and farmers. To find out more about Chicken Soup for the Soil and other products, visit drjims.com. That's drjimz.com.
Make watering easy. DripWorks provides quality drip irrigation supplies and equipment to gardeners just like you for all your growing needs across the U.S. and Canada. Purchase online at dripworks.com.
Got a question for Joey and Holly? Send it via email anytime to gardentalkradio@gmail.com. Do not go anywhere. There is more of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show to come, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com.
Seed Savers Exchange has been saving, preserving, and sharing heirloom seeds since 1975, and today continues to provide those seeds to gardeners just like you. With 600-plus varieties offered in this year's catalog and 18,000 listings on their exchange, their gardener-to-gardener seed swap, Seed Savers Exchange is keeping cherished seed varieties alive. Visit seedsavers.org to request a free catalog or to purchase seeds online for this year's growing season. That's seedsavers.org. The Simply Solar Greenhouse is a one-piece molded fiberglass greenhouse that is easy to install and maintain. Multiple sizes available. Check them all out at migreenhouse.com.
Bluemel's has been one of Milwaukee's premier garden centers for over 60 years.
We have always been committed to putting our customers first. When there's demand, we stock it.
When there is an idea, we grow it.
When there's an opportunity, we build it.
And when there is a need, we deliver. Our family continues to offer you the industry's best garden and landscape products and services.
The same as my parents did when they first started the business back in 1955.
Visit Bluemel's.
Quality and service are the roots of our business.
Bluemel's, 4930 West Loomis Road, 414-282-4220. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show is brought to you by the following: Phylum Bioproducts, Spartan Mosquito, Dr. Jim's, Nasala Kabucha, MI Greenhouse LLC, Green Gobbler, Water Hoop, Seed Savers Exchange. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support.
Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Thank you for hanging around. We're going to get into the conversation of trees. Good fruit trees, good ornamental trees to have on your property. Maybe you're thinking about incorporating trees on your property, but are uncertain of what direction in which you should go. Well, you've tuned into the right program here. We are going to help you out to let you know some of the things in which we would suggest. Now, before we get into the topic here, we want to, the first thing, before we decide whether or not we want to put a tree in the backyard or the front yard, is number one, do we have room to do that?
Right, you want to look up. So you want to look up to see what's already in your canopy, whether it be power lines. Maybe your house is close to your garage and you have this tiny space, and while that tree is growing.
Oh, it looks cute for the first, and oh my goodness, boom, it's big.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you have this huge tree. So you want to keep that in mind. You want to look around where you're going to put this tree. You want to think about, okay, this tree is going to grow 6 feet across at maybe the least and 24 feet across at the most. Do you have space for that? and then think about where you're going to plant the tree and how it's going to branch out 12 feet on each side, what have you.
How is it going to affect the current growing situation that you currently have on your property? Will it shade out part of your vegetable garden? Is it beneficial to, if you're going to get a fruit tree and you shade out part of your vegetable garden with partial shade, does that benefit you to where you can plant those cool weather crops that can tolerate some shade? So is it a give and take? Is it all going to be take and no give? What do we got going on there? So you want to be aware of this before we get into let's put a tree here because we've got a little space. You got to be aware of what it's going to look like 5 years, 8 years, 10 years down the road, because these things are not going to be, oh, we'll just move it, because that ain't happening.
No. So that's something you definitely want to keep in mind is where you're putting it. Then, since you're going to be digging, you want to call Digger's Hotline.
Yeah, your state's Digger's Hotline.
Mm-hmm. And find out before you want to mark the area where you dig, and they'll mark it for you, but you want to let them know. And then they're going to come out and tell you, like, this is good, this is bad. If you dig here, you're going to hit a power line. Who knows, right? It's
a free service, by the way. But it is the law. You do have to have them come out and survey the property in which and where you're going to put it so you don't kill yourself or other people. You also want to find out, do you want to put it in the backyard, in the front yard? And if that is the case, which legally can you do based on your municipality if you do have restrictions on that? Just don't, let's put it in the front yard, and there's certain restrictions in which you can and can't put in, certain trees there. So you want to be aware of that. And also these trees, if you're going with a fruit tree rather than an ornamental tree, you want to go and decide, or you want to know how long is it going to take before you start seeing production out of this tree. And based on the type of tree, apples can be 4 to 5 years, cherries can be 3 to 5 years, pears can be 4 to 6 years, plums can be 3 to 5 years. There's an investment and there's a waiting period in which we have to go through before these things start producing. So keep that in mind.
Right. You're not going to get an immediate satisfaction out of the fruit trees, or whatever you want. Yeah, fruit trees essentially is what they are. Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind.
There are trees.
There are some trees that are meant more for shade. Some are meant for privacy, like the silver maple. It can transfer your backyard into a nice shady area pretty quickly. But then like a red oak is going to take a while to grow tall and really bush out more. It's going to take a little bit more time.
Okay, so let's go over some of these fruit trees. And also with the fruit trees, number one thing here, if you go and buy it online, if you go to your independent garden center, find out if the tree in which you want to purchase is self-fertile, or if you need another tree in which to cross-pollinate. That is a key, because a lot of people buy trees and they go, oh, well, I've had this tree for X number of years, never have got any fruit off of it. Well, that tree is needing a partner to self-pollinate, and in order to do it properly, you want to get 2 trees of the same size so they can grow together and properly pollinate one another. So you want to do your research.
That's important as well. You definitely need to think about that. So let's talk about the apple tree. So the dwarf tree will get 8 to 10 feet tall, and then a regular one will get 20 to 30 feet tall.
Right. There are dwarf varieties of these. There's many varieties of the dwarf variety of fruit trees. We're just going to go over 4. And then there's what is considered regular size trees. And then there's semi-dwarf, kind of a mixture between the two. And keep in mind, when you're going to, when we went over these, we decided to find those that grow very well in zone 4 or higher. You need to know your growing zone. Most of the listeners that we have for this program are in growing zone 4 or higher, so they can grow anywhere in those areas, because there's no sense of us talking about a tree that can only grow in zone 8 to 11 when most of you do not live in a tropical area. It's a waste of all of our time. So, yeah, apple tree, very easy. And when we say up to 20 to 30 feet, that is if you allow it to go. If you just let nature take over, you can trim these things down and can control them.
You can basically prune them.
Yes.
So that they don't grow as big as what is said here.
But you just don't want to go in there and start hacking away. You want to do some research and figure out the proper ways to prune these things so you get the best life expectancy and production off of them. And if you're uncertain of how to go ahead and prune them, there's plenty and very good reputable tree pruning services that will come in that they've studied, and this is what they do for a living, and which can make your tree not only more beautiful, but more productive and maintaining the size of it as well.
Right. So
let's talk about the cherry.
The cherry tree. Now, we have a cherry bush.
Yes.
It has not produced much for us yet. It's given us a few cherries, but we still have, we've had it, this will be our third year.
Yes.
Yeah. But a cherry tree can get 10 feet tall for the dwarf or 20 feet tall for the regular one.
Now, and I'll throw this in there while we're talking about some of these trees, and there are some dwarf trees, apples, peaches, pears, you can grow in a very large container on your patio. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't suggest really growing some of these on a deck because of the weight that they have in it, but there are some very successful gardeners that grow very nice and heavy producing trees in very large planters on their property where they maybe rent or they don't want to, and they can take care of it and maintain it. And there's other varieties that are more grafted to where one particular type of tree has 5 or 6 different branches that produce 5 or 6 different varieties of that specific species of fruit. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of good things out there. Then we got a peach tree.
Yeah, so peach trees, there's a dwarf variety, and then that gets 8 to 10 feet tall, and then the regular one is 25 feet tall. Now, peach trees, you have to figure out the variety for where you live.
Cold hours.
There's some cold hour ones, and then there's ones that are more for warmer climates, but there's a few different varieties. So that's definitely something you want to think about. And just in general, whenever you're planting a tree, you want to make sure that it's going to live wherever you are. Like,
right.
In the north, you might not want to try to grow a palm tree because it's not going to happen.
Well, and then when you may think, 20, 30 feet tall, great, more production, it'll be wonderful. However, keep this in mind, gravity. When these things get ripe, or they just get about ripe, usually you have wind, and these things can plummet to the ground at a great force and splatter on your driveway or in the grass. So you want to keep in mind that you would much rather have maybe fewer fruit, but easier to harvest so you're not losing, and the loss is very minimal, rather than have a 30-foot tree and 60% of the production falls on the ground because you don't have access to harvest that way up there in the top of the tree.
Right. So you definitely want to think about that as well, the height in regards to harvesting and whether or not you want to try to pick the fruit.
Plum trees.
Okay, so plum trees, the American varieties, grow up to 15 to 30 feet tall. I don't think there's dwarf.
It was hard to find some information on that.
There is.
But they're the American varieties. It's good to grow. They do grow in zone 4 and higher. So you want to be aware of, again, the variety. But yeah, if you keep them trimmed, they'll be really good. Let's knock out these non-fruit trees, or I guess they're ornamental trees, that just because they don't produce anything doesn't mean they're not beneficial to your property, as they can create shade for your residents, as well as that will reduce the cooling bill in the summer based on how much shade that tree provides for the house. It makes a very big difference.
Right. So we have the dogwood tree. It's going to be a shorter tree, and it gets about 25 feet tall.
Pretty manageable there.
Yeah, definitely. Maple trees get 60 to 75 feet tall. I feel like that's pretty correct. They are a nice hardy tree.
They grow fast.
And if you got like a sugar maple tree, you could essentially harvest maple syrup. Yeah.
And now the thing with maples that I've seen, and many people seen, these big old grandfather trees rotten in the center, and they have the tendency of, during snowstorms, ice storms, or windstorms, snap because there's not a whole lot of density inside of them anymore. So something on the long range forecast on that tree selection you might want to be aware of there.
So then there's silver maples. They get the same height about, and that's the one that can grow pretty fast. Now the red oak, those get 75 feet tall.
That's a tall tree.
Mm-hmm. There's a miniature.
Yeah.
A dwarf chinkapin oak, so it's like more of a shrub. So they grow 13 to 20 feet tall.
Yeah, so maybe the atmosphere, the place you have doesn't support a 75-foot tree. Now, this is just the height. Some of these trees can grow 50 feet high and 30 feet wide, so it sucks up a lot of real estate above where you're at. So keep that in mind. It's just not, that's how high it is. No, there's a lot of width to these things as well. Dwarf Japanese maples, they're slow growing, they're compact trees, and they can grow about they can get anywhere from 3 to 8 foot in height. So something a little different in height selection. If
that sounds like a cute little tree to have.
Yeah. And these are just some of them. There's dozens upon dozens that flower, that bring pollinators in, that are very pretty, different colors of flowers. So it's a lot of different things there. So if you're thinking about trees, gave you some information, somewhere to start with, and hopefully that you maybe consider a little bit of both, a fruit tree and maybe an ornamental tree, as we continue to look at different options as we're changing our garden up each year.
Soon it will be warming up again. You want to make sure you enjoy your yard without sharing it with beetles and grubs. Spring is just around the corner. For many of us, we're experiencing some spring-like weather. There's Japanese beetles articles from all over the Midwest. We get this question a lot. Grub Gone can be applied to your turf or garden or on ornamentals to control the grubs and lessen the impact the beetles have on your yard this summer. You want to apply it now or as soon as possible. Easy to use, apply with any commercial spreader and irrigate into the soil. It specifically targets grub and beetle invaders without harming beneficials such as bees, ladybugs, and butterflies. And it's the only non-chemical that works. You can find this information at phyllombioproducts.com. That's PHYLLOM bioproducts.com.
Well, do not go anywhere. When we come back, author Kim Eierman will be with us. You're listening to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, a program dedicated to help you grow a better garden, maintain your landscape, grow healthier trees, make your grass look a little bit greener, as well as preserving what you grow indoors and out.
24/7, 365. The WisconsinVegetableGardener.com is your place for all things gardening, canning, radio shows, digital magazines, and more. The WisconsinVegetableGardener.com.
Planting conditions are always favorable with the Power Planter Earth Auger. No matter what the job is, Power Planter has the right size for you. Simply attach to a drill and let the Power Planter do the work for you, creating holes fast and efficiently with ease. Find the size that fits your project at PowerPlanter.com.
Trim Bin turns any chair into a workstation. Comfortably sort your herbs, dried flowers, cannabis, and more. Easily collect pollen with a static brush and mirror finish collection tray. High walls keep your work contained. To get yours, visit harvest-more.com. Made in California.
Do not go anywhere. There is more of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show to come, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit PowerPlanter.com.
The number one key to healthy, productive plants are the roots. Starting from seed to full-grown plants, RootMaker.com has the answer. From seed starting trays with an innovative design that air prunes the roots, creating a fabulous root system, never again will you have root-bound plants. To multiple gallon grow bag sizes to raised beds, RootMaker.com has your grow needs covered. Visit RootMaker.com. Use coupon code TWVG at checkout and get 10% off your entire order.
Oh, yeah. What you say? You say Nasala Kombucha. It'll put some glide in your stride and some pep in your step. Nasala Kombucha. Yeah.
Nasala Kombucha makes your body happy. Nasala Kombucha makes your body smile.
The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show is brought to you by the following: Power Planter Earth Augers, Ivy Organics, Root Maker, Pomona Universal Pectin, Chapin Manufacturing Incorporated, Pro Plugger, Tomato Snaps, World's Coolest Floating Rain Gauge. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support. Another growing season is just mere weeks away, and the place to go for all the Milwaukeeans to get all the garden supplies that they possibly could need is Bluemel's Landscape and Garden Center. Bluemel's has over 40 varieties of bulk material. They have a knowledgeable staff, as well as they'll cater to your needs. If you don't want to cut grass, they have that service available to you. If you need delivery on your bulk material, they can do that for you. If you need landscaping done, they will help you get that done and get it done the way you want to do it, not the way they want you to have it done. Bluemel's Landscape and Garden Center, you can find them just off of Layton at 4930 West Loomis Road in Greenfield. You can give them a call anytime at 414-282-4220.
Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Thank you for hanging around to listen to our guest that we have brought in. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Yep, Kim Eierman is the founder of Eco Beneficial. She's an environmental horticulturist specializing in ecological landscapes and native plants. Welcome to the program, Kim.
Oh, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to not only enlighten Holly and myself, but we love bringing people on to enlighten all of us across the country and all of our stations.
So, could you tell us, Kim, what is an ecological landscape?
Sure. Well, our conventional landscapes tend to focus on aesthetics and often perfection. And an ecological landscape can still be beautiful, but it really focuses on a healthy ecosystem, really supporting both wildlife and human beings, things like healthy soil, healthy air, prevention of soil erosion, and one of my favorite topics, pollination services.
Well, that's pretty interesting, and it's kind of, make it work for the person, but also make it work for nature as well, because a lot of times we do landscapes and it's all about the homeowner, all about what we want, and it kind of actually messes up the nature procedure.
Sure, and we kind of forget oftentimes that we depend on the nature around us. The UN defined the services that nature provides us with as ecosystem services, like a lot of those things I just mentioned: clean air, clean water, pollination services, prevention of soil erosion, healthy soil, all those things. So we really owe it to ourselves and to the nature around us to support our ecosystems.
Absolutely, especially give to nature. And also with that, look what nature's doing and try to adapt to them rather than making them adapt to us, which we all seem to want to do more often than the other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. So there are many steps that are both pleasing to us as gardeners, and of course, for many in your audience, home gardeners, things that are beautiful and helpful. But there are a lot of these services that we can support without really doing too much. So, for example, if you're growing vegetables at home, you probably are anxious to have better quality of vegetables and or fruit and increased yields, right?
Yeah.
So how do we do that? Well, very simply, we can start thinking about putting in more flowering plants that support the animal pollinators that will help us with that job. And about a third of the food that we eat is animal pollinated, not just by bees, but there are many other pollinators too that are pollinators of specific species of fruits and vegetables. Folks will know the bumblebee probably is one of our great pollinators of things like blueberries. But in some cases, there are plants that we're growing that don't require animal pollination, but can benefit from it. And a classic example for home gardeners who are growing vegetables are tomatoes. So even though tomatoes are self-fertile, they really benefit from pollination, specifically by bumblebees.
Well, you bring up a very to some people, maybe a very shocking statistic there, that 1/3 of everything that we eat, if it wasn't for bees, we would be losing out on some of very things that we enjoy every day or look forward to. So that's one of the reasons why we want to continue to increase the pollination population rather than just whatever. Nature will take care of itself. Mm-hmm. Well, nature will take care of itself if we don't mess it up.
And the number is even bigger when we start to think about all the produce that doesn't require animal pollination but benefits from it. So that's even a bigger number. And then if we think about all the flowering plants on Earth that require animal pollination, well, that's about 80% or so of all the flowering plants on Earth that need some sort of animal pollinator, whether it be a bee or a beetle or a bat or even we have wasp pollinators. We have so many different types of pollinators, moths, butterflies, many different types of pollinators.
Okay, now what are some resources for people to find out what plants are native to their area?
Sure, and so that's a really important factor in gardening ecologically is really using native plants that have evolved in your region that support the regional wildlife, and so it's getting easier. It's getting easier to figure out what is native. On my website, which is ecobeneficial.com, that's my company, EcoBeneficial. So I have some regional plant lists that are supportive to pollinators that listeners can reference. But I also encourage listeners to go to their Native Plant Society website and join up a regional or statewide Native Plant Society and get information there as well.
Well, you bring up the native plants, and for people who are not aware of the importance of growing native plants, you've touched on some of that, but also those native plants, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, without native plants, you don't have that population of pollinators or other beneficial insects or even enemies that those beneficial insects will help combat.
Well, yeah, native plants are, the term is loosely used, and I think best practice is to use native plants that have evolved in your region and that are appropriate to your site, that evolved for many, typically many hundreds of years. There are so many dynamics that are going on in our landscapes that we're not even aware of, these huge food chains where one critter is eating another critter is eating another critter, and a particular type of pollinator is a specialist at pollinating a particular plant. One plant might be incredibly useful and supportive of a hummingbird, while that same plant wouldn't appeal to, say, a short-tongued bee, which will be looking for different types of plants.
For sure. Now, when it comes to pollinators, we've touched on it a little bit here. What are some ways, besides, flowers, what are some ways in which we can bring them in? Is there homes or things that we can construct to allow them to live in our property, or what's some good things to do about that?
So you're touching on a really important point. It's critical to have floral resources, i.e. flowering plants, whether they be trees or shrubs or perennials, a combination of all of the above that are useful to pollinators. And not all pollinators go at every plant. You can learn more about that on my website and my new book, The Pollinator Victory Garden. So going to kind of get to know what pollinators you have and what plants they want. So having that floral buffet, as it were, throughout the growing season is important. But pollinators also have to live somewhere. So it's critical that we provide them with habitat. We provide them with a place to live. So in the case of bees, for example, we have about 4,000 species or so of native bees in North America, and the vast majority of them are ground dwellers. They nest in the ground. So a simple thing like keeping a patch of bare soil in a sunny area as a habitat for some of these ground nesting native bees is really important. And then for the cavity nesters, leaving some pithy stems of plants that have died back, that's a very useful way to attract them, and allowing them to go into beetle burrows or cracks in our stone walls. There are many places those bees can utilize, leaving some dead logs in our landscape that beetles tunnel into, and then bees use those tunnels as nesting sites. So the habitat is very important too. And then, of course, if we start decreasing our lawn and encourage more native flowering plants, that's very helpful. But important to make sure that we're eliminating pesticides. Pesticides and pollinators do not mix well. So that is something that Americans aren't used to thinking about. I think in Europe, a little bit more advanced than we are with regard to that. So we're thinking about using, and you alluded to it, beneficial insects, natural enemies, attracting those insects that help keep our pest populations down. And we can do that with some small flowered native plants, like most people know what a yarrow is. That's a wonderful native plant to attract some of those beneficial insects that are natural enemies. And, really thinking about this constant flow of resources for nectar and pollen throughout the entire growing season and not having a gap period. Really super important in the beginning of the season and also super important in the fall, but all throughout the growing season to have that constant floral buffet of diverse species of plants for diverse types of pollinators.
Yeah, and we always say don't spray the dandelions. That's one of the first feeds that these bees have, and you spray them and they take it back to the hive, and that's just detrimental to the whole system.
Right.
Well, here, you talked about the many of the bee species live in the ground or in the nest. What advice would you give to a homeowner if they see these bees nesting or developing or next to where the kids play or how they enter and exit the home? What's some advice you would give somebody in that situation?
So ground nesting bees typically want an area of bare soil or pretty lightly vegetated soil in full sun. So if you see them nesting already and it's an area that you can tolerate them existing, encourage it. If they're in an inconvenient spot, you might try to kind of recreate a similar area by clearing some grass, leaving the soil bare. Has to be soil that's workable, can't be too sandy, can't be too clay-based and heavy. Has to be workable by the bees, and just leave that area alone. And if it's something you can't tolerate looking at, well, get a short screen of maybe some native grasses as a buffer in front of it, making sure not to shade the area out too much. But those are some ways that we can accommodate those particular types of bees.
Definitely. Now, where can our listeners find out more about you?
Well, again, my website is ecobeneficial.com, all one word, and I've got an enormous amount of information there, including some of my own podcasts. And also, I encourage folks to pick up my new book called The Pollinator Victory Garden, Win the War on Pollinator Decline with Ecological Gardening. It just came out in January.
Great book, by the way. Great book, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, Kim, we greatly appreciate you taking time not only in educating Holly and myself on bees and pollinators, but also all of our listeners across the country.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Well, you're very welcome. And don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll answer your garden questions. You're listening to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, a program dedicated to help you grow a better garden, maintain your landscape, grow healthier trees, make that grass look greener, as well as preserving what you grow.
Got a question for Joey and Holly? Send it via email anytime to gardentalkradio@gmail.com.
Pomona's Universal Pectin is a high-quality pectin that gels reliably with low amounts of any sweetener. If you're trying to reduce the amount of sugar in your diet, you'll love Pomona's Universal Pectin. Now you can make healthy homemade jams and jellies sweetened to your taste. You can use sugar or honey to sweeten. Pomona's Universal Pectin keeps indefinitely when stored in an airtight container. Easy to use, versatile, and comes with directions and recipes in every box. Find out more and where to buy at PomonaPectin.com. Also available at natural food stores and online. Dig planting holes from a comfortable standing position. Step, twist, pull, and plant. Visit ProPlugger.com.
Do not go anywhere. There is more of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show to come, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit PowerPlanter.com. Do you tweet? Send Joey and Holly a tweet to @TWVG Show or just use #TWVG and they will tweet you back.
Brought to you by Blue Ribbon Organics, providing locally made organic compost and soil blends for gardens, farms, landscaping, and more. Visit BlueRibbonOrganics.com or call 262-497-8539 to find their products nearest you.
Protect your plants against damage with the 3-in-1 Plant Guard and Special Blend Fertilizer. Visit IvyOrganics.com.
Bluemel's Garden and Landscape Center offers an awesome selection of high-quality garden and landscape products. We have just the plants you're looking for: annuals, perennials, veggies, herbs, and more. Plus, you can always count on us to answer all of your questions and offer expert advice. Bluemel's also carries the largest selection of bulk landscape materials in the area. Enjoy a beverage from our coffee shop while your kids run around in our huge playground. Join our growing list of highly satisfied customers. Visit the garden center that offers everything you're looking for. Visit Bluemel's today.
Bluemel's, 4930 West Loomis Road, 414-282-4220. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show is brought to you by the following: Neptune Harvest, Happy Leaf LED, Dripworks, We Grow Indoors, Deer Defeat, Harvest More, Blue Ribbon Organics, Bluemel's Landscape and Garden Center, Chip Drop. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support.
Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit PowerPlanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, rocking and rolling through another program. Glad you have joined us. We're going to answer some of your garden questions. Holly, we got a bunch that came in. If you want to submit a question, you can certainly do that at gardentalkradio@gmail.com. That's gardentalkradio@gmail.com. That's our email address, anytime, day or night. You can also jam your fingers in the phone anytime and leave us, if we can't get to you on the show, you can leave us a message at 1-800-927-SHOW. That's 1-800-927-SHOW. Holly, what's our first question?
Well, somebody would like to know, I would love it if I could be pointed in the right direction for what I can do right now to prepare for spring. Thank you so much.
I'm in Wisconsin. Okay, well, this is kind of applicable to many of the people that are listening to the program across the country, kind of in that same growing zone, even though you may be in a different state. A couple of things you can do right now is start looking at what you're wanting to plant, whether it be seed or direct sowing in the ground when the soil is workable and the temperature is adequate for the particular type of variety in which you're going to plant. You can also decide where you're going to put this. If you don't have an actual garden, you can start designing one in your head and on paper. Hey, I want this size. I'm going to do research on whether raised beds or grow bags or containers or in ground. There's a lot of things on that aspect. Get your layout down. Always, I know everybody who has never gardened before, the first thing they want to do is as much as I can plant. Bigger is better, and that's not always. Sometimes bigger is detrimental because it gets overwhelming very quickly. It's okay to start small. In a 4x4, which is 16 square foot raised bed, 4x8, 32, you can pack a lot of stuff in a bed like that and get a lot of production because you're growing in good soil in a raised bed aspect. You can do that in the ground too, but your soil may not be as fertile as compost or a mix that you bring into a raised bed. So a couple of things, you can see what seeds you want to start outside, get them started inside if that's what they require, start laying out your garden and making sure that you have the tools and the equipment you need so when you're ready to go, you're not fumbling around for a couple of hours on a Saturday or a Sunday, going to the hardware store, getting a shovel, getting this or ordering that and having to wait for it. Make sure you have everything ready to go before you hit the ground running. We've got a lot of prep time. Be sure, try to get all the T's crossed and the I's dotted so you're ready to go.
Definitely. So from Instagram, I'm trying to find out how to use pet ashes from cremation in the garden. From what I gather, it is either very similar to bone meal or very similar. It is like bone meal. We want to memorialize our cat this way. He can be part of the trees in the forest. But I don't want to overdo it or underdo it as I'm trying to get my bearings.
There's some things here. Sorry for your loss, number one. Number two, it's similar to bone meal. Yes. You're not going to overdo it if you put it on the plants in your garden or, on your trees. There's a small amount of potash, in the ashes, and it's not going to really have a long-term effect on the plants. But you want to have that symbolism of, that particular pet as part of the tree, nutrient type of thing. Also, what you want to do is if you're going to put that on the plant, you would want to work that into the soil a little bit because these ashes can float away and, be carried off. So you want to work them in a little bit and, cover them up and you'll be fine. It's a nice way to honor the pet in which you have, lost.
Definitely. Any tips for growing, Cynthia wants to know, any tips for growing tomatoes upside down?
Well, first of all, not a big fan of tomatoes upside down. Tomatoes grow really good right side up. However, if you're in a situation where tomatoes, you're on a patio porch deck that you have some easement that hangs over and you really are limited on space and you want to grow upside down tomatoes, you want to make sure you start with a good soil mix because these plants are heavy feeders and most likely you're going to have to feed that plant over the growing season, and you would want to get a variety of a cherry variety because it doesn't take nearly as long for those particular fruits to develop on the plant as it would a large beefsteak tomato. So a couple of things there. It does work. It can work. Best if you put it right side up and put it in a root maker grow bag, but you can grow them upside down to a certain degree.
Definitely. So will there be a problem with some plants crossing with others of the same family varieties of planted close together? So it's a yes and no question.
It's a very popular, very good question to ask.
So for the current growing season, if you're just growing for production, no. If you're growing to save seed, there can be some cross-pollination. If you're growing 5 varieties of cucumbers, for example, there's a good chance you will have cross varieties if you save the seeds. Now, that could be good or bad. You may have a new type of cucumber that tastes delicious, or maybe one that tastes like watery cardboard.
Yeah, or worse.
Or worse, yeah.
Can you use palm cacti fruit soil to grow cantaloupe seedlings and grow them to their full maturity, like in a giant grow bag?
So that's kind of a no. Palm cactus fruit soil is very high draining, which means it drains quickly. It doesn't hold water very well. So you want to use something like a compost or a potting soil. It's going to hold that moisture. Palm cactus fruit soil is basically for those plants like the tropical-ish, deserty plants, whatever, where it needs a little bit more drainage, doesn't hold as much moisture.
All right. I've never grown beets before. I don't have a yard, just have some pots that I want to grow them in. How big of a pot or pots do I need in order to grow these plants?
Well, beets can actually grow in any size pot, but the larger the container, the more you can grow. So if you're looking at a pot, you want to think about the depth. The depth of a beet is at 5 to 6 inches is what you want. Probably more like 8 to 10 inches would be good. As far as...
Because that taproot can go and that really feeds the bulb. Yeah.
Yeah, the taproot. So you probably, even like a foot, but 10 inches should be good. As far as like the circumference or the area, you can fit 9 beets in 1 square foot. So if you're looking at something like a 5-gallon bucket, you could fit, I would think, 7 to 8 beets in that.
I would think so.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about that way, that's how you could grow them.
Yeah, beets can be very versatile, but you need to thin the beets out. These are cluster seeds, and if you don't thin them out, they're going to compete. There's a cluster of 5 or 6 seeds. That's just how naturally they grow. And if you don't thin the beets out, you're not going to have any beet root, and you're just going to have greens, and you're going to be disappointed. So here's a good question that we got. What do you recommend, a plastic or metal watering can?
So for us, we use both. And we have a nice metal one that my mom bought Joey one year for his birthday or something. And then we have some plastic ones that we just happen to accumulate. This is based on what you can lift also. So it's not necessarily about the material, but it's about the size.
I want a 12-gallon. Well, if you can't lift a 2-gallon, there's there's not a 12-gallon, but I'm being, but yeah.
So you have to think about that. Can I lift this if it has water in it? And so you have to be realistic about that. You also want one that is going to have a removable spout on it so that if it does get jammed up for some reason, you can clean it out, especially if you're going to be leaving it outside. Leaves can fall into it, whatever. Sometimes that happens.
What is required to grow asparagus? I'm considering putting it in the garden, but have no clue about it. Where would I purchase the starts, if that's what they're even called? Well, asparagus, they're called crowns, and you can start them from seed. However, they take about 3 years from seed in order, before you're ever going to get anything of a harvest stature. You can buy from online services and sometimes your independent garden center 1-year crowns and 2-year crowns to put in your garden. If you do a 2-year crown, then next spring you should be able to at least get some type of harvest. Holly and I have been discussing the possibilities of doing a 10-foot row of asparagus 2-year-old crown. Since we're converting most of the garden to raised beds, we can take some of that native ground that once was garden and turn it into a perennial bed. That's a discussion that we've had. But there's different, you want to space them about 1.5 to 2 foot apart. You want it good draining soil, and you want to make a trench and you plant them in there, and there's a lot of videos online that show how to do this. But a 2-year crown would be a small investment. You can get about 10 of those for $20, $25, something like that. Now, again, with asparagus, this is a perennial. And when I mean a perennial, I mean a long-lasting, up to 50 years in some cases. And there's several different varieties. There's a white variety, there's a purple variety, there's green varieties. But where you put it, that baby's going to sit there for a long time. There's some maintenance you have to do, but minimal, in order for the homegrown asparagus, which is, if you've ever had farmer's market asparagus, that's a close second to homegrown asparagus. So that's something there. Do I need to seal pressure-treated wood that I'm making my raised beds out of? It's not necessary.
No, it's not necessary, because it should last a long time, but you can seal it if you want.
Yeah, with after the installation, when you get pressure treated lumber, there's some density and some, it's massive weight because it's got this treatment in it. It's not arsenic; it's a copper treated material, so it's not necessarily it's going to leach into your soil. There are some copper elements in which plants need in order to grow. So we're going to use pressure treated lumber on our raised beds. You want to let that lumber dry out a little bit before you seal it. There are some techniques in which to do that. About 2 to 4 weeks and let it dry out. And then you can paint it or stain it. There are some non-toxic stains. And you may get a couple of more years out of that lumber, even though it's pressure treated, and then you've also sealed it as well. But it's something you want to look into and see if you can do that, or if it's worth the effort in which to go about doing it. Well, we are out of time, and we certainly appreciate your time and being part of the program. If you of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show, you can visit our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com. If you've missed any portion of this show, or you want to revisit it or past shows, by going to the Season 4 tab at the top of the page. Or you can send us an email at gardentalkradio@gmail.com and ask for show 3 or 2 or 1 or 4 or whatever you want. We've got a lot of programs that are available to you. We've got 3 years of archives, by the way, 105 shows there. You can tell your garden friends that Garden Talk Radio is on the radio, because that's how people find our program, and we all learn together. Join us next week on the program. We'll be talking about the Victory Garden. What was it, and may it come back here, the rebirth of it, in 2020. And growing okra. Do you like okra? Did you know you can grow okra outside of the southern portions of the United States? Well, you can. We'll talk about how you can do that. And very popular YouTuber and now new author, Callie Kim, will be with us. We will also answer as many of your garden questions as we can. So until next week,
I'm Holly Baird.
I'm Joy Baird, and we will see you in the garden.